April 16th, 1947. A beautiful spring morning in Texas City. Longshoremen were loading a French cargo ship with fertilizer when someone noticed smoke. Within minutes, the harbor would become ground zero for the largest industrial accident in American history. The explosion that followed was so powerful, it knocked 2 planes out of the sky, shattered windows 40 miles away in Houston, and registered on seismographs in Denver, Colorado, over 900 miles away. Almost 600 people would die, thousands more would be maimed, and an entire city would be erased in a matter of hours. But here's what makes this tragedy truly haunting. Every single person who could have prevented it saw the warning signs. They just didn't realize they were about to detonate a bomb powerful enough to flatten a city block. Texas City in 1947 was a booming industrial port town on the Gulf Coast, about 40 miles southeast of Houston. After World War II ended, America was racing to help rebuild war-torn Europe, and Texas City had become a critical hub in that effort. The waterfront bristled with oil refineries, chemical plants, and warehouses storing everything from petroleum to industrial chemicals. The population had swelled to nearly 20,000 residents, working-class families drawn by good-paying jobs at the docks and refineries. But prosperity had brought risk. The city had essentially become a powder keg, with volatile materials stored in close proximity to one another, separated only by a few hundred yards and good luck. That morning, the SS Grandcamp, a former Liberty ship now operated by the French line, sat at Pier O, being loaded with a cargo that would seal the town's fate. And what was in those holds wasn't just dangerous, it was something the US government had specifically manufactured to win a war, never imagining it might destroy an American city. The cargo was ammonium nitrate, 2,300 tons of it, bound for the farmers of post-war France. During World War II, ammonium nitrate had served dual purposes, as an agricultural fertilizer and as a key ingredient in military explosives. The US government had produced massive quantities of it, and now they were shipping the surplus overseas as part of the Marshall Plan. But there was something most people didn't understand about ammonium nitrate in 1947. Under the right conditions, it wasn't just explosive, it was catastrophically so. To make matters worse, the ammonium nitrate had been coated with wax and mixed with small amounts of petrolatum, petroleum jelly, to prevent caking during the long ocean voyage. This seemingly practical decision had turned each 100-pound paper bag into a fuel-air bomb waiting for ignition. By 8 a.m. on April 16th, longshoremen had already loaded over 2,000 tons when someone in Hold 4 noticed something that made his blood run cold. Smoke. Thin wisps at first, curling up from between the stacked bags of fertilizer. The longshoremen immediately notified the ship's crew, and Captain Charles de Guillebon came to investigate. Here's where the first critical mistake was made, but you have to understand, it seemed logical at the time. The captain, concerned about damaging the cargo and the ship, made a decision that would doom everyone aboard. Instead of flooding the hold with water, which might ruin thousands of dollars worth of fertilizer, he ordered his crew to seal the hatches and pump steam into the hold to smother the fire. This was standard firefighting procedure for many ship fires in 1947. The theory was simple: cut off the oxygen, kill the fire, minimize damage. But this was no normal fire. Inside that sealed hold, the temperature was rising rapidly. The ammonium nitrate was beginning to decompose, releasing oxygen as it broke down, meaning the fire was creating its own air supply. The steam wasn't smothering anything. It was turning the hold into a pressure cooker. And with every passing minute, the chemical reaction was accelerating toward a threshold no one on that dock could have imagined. By 8:30 a.m., it was clear the steam method wasn't working. Thick, rust-colored smoke was now billowing from the ship's ventilators, the distinctive color of nitrogen dioxide, a byproduct of ammonium nitrate decomposition. The smoke was so unusual, so strangely beautiful in the morning light, that it began attracting spectators. Workers from nearby refineries wandered over on their breaks. Residents came down to the docks with their children to watch the excitement. The local volunteer fire department arrived and began spraying water on the ship's exterior to keep it cool, but Captain de Guibon still refused to flood the holds. Meanwhile, inside the Grandcamp's sealed holds, the temperature had crossed 570 degrees Fahrenheit, the detonation threshold. The pressure was building exponentially. The ship's hull was beginning to vibrate. Longshoremen on the dock later reported they could feel heat radiating from the ship's steel plates. A few of them, sensing something was terribly wrong, began backing away from the vessel. But most stayed, watching the orange smoke swirl into the blue Texas sky. No one evacuated. No sirens warned people to take cover. And that's because nobody, not the captain, not the fire chief, not even the chemical engineers working in the nearby plants, truly understood what was about to happen. At 9:12 a.m., the SS Grandcamp exploded. Not just exploded, disintegrated. The force was estimated at roughly 2.7 to 3 kilotons of TNT. The ship simply ceased to exist. Transformed in a microsecond from a 437-foot steel vessel into a cloud of superheated gas and shrapnel. The blast wave radiated outward at supersonic speed, flattening everything within a quarter-mile radius. The Monsanto Chemical Company plant, located just across the dock, was obliterated instantly, killing 234 of its workers. The volunteer firefighters who had been spraying water on the ship were vaporized, all 27 of them gone in an instant. The shockwave shattered windows in Houston, 40 miles across the bay. A massive fireball rose thousands of feet into the air, carrying chunks of the Grandcamp, some weighing several tons. The ship's 1-ton anchor was later found buried in the ground over 2 kilometers away. But here's the twist that turned disaster into apocalypse. The explosion had set everything in Texas City on fire. The blast had ignited the refineries. Storage tanks filled with petroleum and chemicals erupted into towering columns of flame. Pipelines ruptured, sending rivers of burning fuel through the streets. The oil-soaked waters of the harbor became a sea of fire that consumed every ship still moored at the docks. And then, someone noticed something that made the survivors' hearts stop. The SS High Flyer, another cargo ship docked just 600 feet from where the Grandcamp had been, was also loaded with ammonium nitrate. 1,000 tons of it. Texas had just experienced a city-rocking explosion, and now another bomb was floating in the burning harbor. The High Flyer's moorings had been severed by the first blast, and flames were already licking at its deck. Workers tried desperately to tow the High Flyer out to sea, but the intense heat and spreading fires made it impossible to approach. All through the afternoon and into the evening, the ship drifted through the inferno, a floating time bomb that everyone could see, but no one could stop. Imagine knowing exactly when and where the next explosion would occur, having 15 hours to prepare, and being completely powerless to prevent it. That was the nightmare Texas City faced on the night of April 16, 1947. At 1:10 a.m. on April 17th, 16 hours after the first explosion, the SS High Flyer detonated. The second blast was almost as powerful as the first, measuring an estimated 2 kilotons. It destroyed what little of the port facilities remained standing and sent another shockwave rolling across the traumatized city. The combined death toll would eventually reach 581 confirmed dead, with dozens more never found, their bodies consumed by the fires or blown into the Gulf. Another 5,000 people were injured, many horrifically burned or maimed by flying debris. Nearly 1,000 buildings were destroyed or damaged beyond repair. The economic losses exceeded $100 million in 1947 money, well over $1 billion today. Texas City, a thriving port town just 24 hours earlier, had effectively been erased from the map. But the true cost couldn't be measured in dollars or even in lives lost. It was measured in the families destroyed, in the children who lost both parents in a single morning, in the workers who went to their jobs and simply never came home. The Texas City disaster taught America 5 crucial lessons that would reshape industrial safety forever. 1. Chemical safety can never be assumed. Before 1947, ammonium nitrate was widely considered safe for transport because it required specific conditions to detonate. What investigators discovered was that the wax and petrolatum coating had dramatically increased its flammability, and the steam pumped into the sealed hold created perfect detonation conditions. In response, Congress passed legislation requiring comprehensive safety data sheets for all industrial chemicals, detailing their properties, hazards, and emergency procedures. Today, every hazardous material shipped in the United States comes with extensive documentation that traces its lineage back to events like Texas City. The assumption of safety had killed hundreds. Proof of safety would now be required by law. 2. Emergency response requires unified command. The Texas City response was chaotic because no single agency had authority over the disaster. The ship's captain answered to French maritime law. The volunteer fire department had no power to order evacuations. When the smoke first appeared, at least 30 minutes passed before anyone even considered a citywide evacuation, and no one had the authority to order one. People stood watching the smoke because no one with authority told them to run. In the disaster's wake, Texas established unified emergency management systems that gave clear authority to incident commanders during crises. The chaotic response at Texas City underscored the need for unified command and better coordination lessons that later fed into the development of modern incident management systems. Such systems exist because this disaster proved that coordination can mean the difference between chaos and control. 3. Industrial zoning protects communities. Texas City's waterfront was a checkerboard of hazards. The Monsanto plant sat just across the docks. Oil refineries neighbored chemical facilities. Residential neighborhoods started just blocks from the industrial zone. When the Grandcamp exploded, the blast triggered a cascade of secondary explosions precisely because everything dangerous had been built close together for economic efficiency. Now, Texas and other states adopted strict industrial zoning laws requiring buffer zones between hazardous facilities and populated areas. Modern chemical plants must be set back substantial distances from residential zones. These regulations have prevented countless similar cascading disasters. The concept seems obvious now, but it took disasters like Texas for America to realize industrial efficiency and public safety were sometimes incompatible goals. 4. Transparency saves lives. Perhaps the most troubling aspect of the disaster was how many people could have been saved if they'd simply known the danger. The longshoremen didn't know they were loading explosive material. The spectators who gathered to watch had no idea they were standing in a blast zone. The cargo manifest listed fertilizer compound, which was technically true but catastrophically misleading. In the aftermath, regulations were implemented requiring clear labeling of hazardous materials, mandatory safety briefings for workers handling dangerous substances, and community right-to-know laws. Today, if a facility stores hazardous materials, nearby residents must be informed. These transparency requirements exist because Texas City proved that ignorance isn't just unwise, it's deadly. 5. Legal accountability drives safety culture. The Texas City disaster led to a landmark Supreme Court case that fundamentally changed how America approaches industrial safety. Survivors and victims' families sued the US government, arguing that negligence in manufacturing, packaging, and shipping the ammonium nitrate had caused the disaster. The government claimed sovereign immunity. In 1953, the Supreme Court sided with the government, but the case sparked a national conversation about responsibility for industrial disasters. While survivors lost their case, their fight led to Federal Tort Claims Act amendments and the creation of strict liability standards for hazardous materials. Companies could no longer simply claim accidents were unforeseeable. They had a duty to ensure their products were safe. The modern safety culture in American industry exists partly because Texas City established that the costs of negligence could be catastrophic in every sense. The Texas City disaster killed 581 people in a preventable catastrophe that took less than a second to unfold. But those deaths were not in vain. The lessons learned from that April morning in 1947 have saved countless lives in the decades since. Every safety regulation, every hazard label, every emergency response protocol that exists today carries within it the memory of Texas City. Modern ammonium nitrate is formulated differently, stored differently, shipped differently, all because of what happened that day. The industrial landscape of America was forever changed by April 16, 1947. We learned that efficiency without safety is suicide, that transparency without honesty is meaningless, and that preparation without authority is paralysis. The day Texas burned, America learned what happens when we forget that some mistakes you only get to make once.